After the Reverse Flash beat the crap out of Batman, he took the mysterious button that had been emanating with some sort of power, but immediately upon doing so, his body was disintegrated. Upon investigating what remained of his body, Barry made an interesting discovery. Instead of being covered with energy from the negative Speed Force, Thawne's body was covered in his very own energy signature, making him question if maybe a future version of himself killed Thawne. So he sped over to Alfred to see what he could get out of the surveillance footage, but unfortunately he didn't get anything because all the surveillance equipment had been damaged, and that meant that Barry needed to talk to Bruce because he was the incident's only witness. Upon making it to his room, we realize just how substantial Bruce's wounds are, but him and Barry get straight to business and start discussing the details of the case. Eventually Bruce says that he saw his father, leading Barry to believe that this was all his fault and that they were still facing the repercussions of when he saved his mom. But Bruce wasn't convinced that that was the case, believing that they were missing a part of the equation, and there was definitely something missing alright, because moments later, Barry revealed that the button was nowhere to be found. But it couldn't have been a coincidence that Eobard was so drawn to it, since it had appeared in the Batcave on the same night that Wally West was brought back to life. And speaking of Wally being brought back to life, ever since then, Barry had two unexplainable visions, one about Thawne and one about the Helmet of Mercury. So whatever was going on and whatever happened to Thawne must have something to do with the Speed Force. Later on, Barry made his way to the Justice League Watchtower, a place that Hal Jordan called the Hall of Lost and Found because of how many stray artifacts and gadgets they had kept there. And the specific gadget that Barry was there for was one that was all too familiar, the Cosmic Treadmill. Despite swearing that he'd never step on it again because of what happened with Flashpoint, Barry was desperate and knew that it was detrimental in finding whatever they were missing in this case. But before being able to put it to use, he was stopped in his tracks by the Dark Knight himself, expressing that this was his case too and that he wasn't letting Barry go alone. Initially, Barry didn't want him to go because time travel was super risky and he was still recovering from all his injuries, but in the end, he let him tag along because, well, Bruce was being stubborn. After putting it to use, things got pretty scary. Reality seemed to be splitting open, they almost got separated from each other, and when things finally calmed down, the treadmill was completely destroyed. But things weren't adding up, because now they were somehow in the Batcave again, and eventually Bruce discovered the gun that took his parents' lives in the alleyway, which didn't make any sense because he never recovered that gun. So what was going on? Well, it turns out that they weren't standing in his Batcave, they were standing in his father Thomas's Batcave, who tells him that he did all of this because of him. But sadly, that's where this issue comes to an end, but if you want to see what happens next, let me know in the comments down below.